Really dislike Jake Paul. Now, I don't dislike him. I understand him. I want to make something clear. I would still kick the living fuck out of Jake.
Andrew Tate utterly humiliated Jake Paul on live TV, showcasing just how predictable Jake's antics have become. First, Jake backed out of Andrew Tate's $3 million fight proposal, proving his lack of courage. Then, he stooped even lower by dragging Mike Tyson into a clearly scripted match. Exploiting a legendary boxer past his prime for clout and cash is a new low, even for Jake. Once again, he manages to surpass even the lowest expectations with his desperate moves.
Because he's allowed himself to become the biggest clown on the internet, and now he's famous, right? Because he's an idiot, but he has a bunch of money, so he gets to...
Now, Jake Paul is trying to provoke Andrew Tate into a fight, fully aware he'll never actually step into the ring. Why? Because Jake knows he'd lose and is banking on Tate rejecting the offer to twist the narrative and inflate his ego. But Andrew Tate isn't taking the bait. Instead, he dismantled Jake publicly on live TV, exposing every ounce of his fraudulence for the world to see.
You only want to lose to them so you can say, well, I lost to Conor McGregor. Why don't you lose to an old man who's retired? I live in the real f***ing world, Jake. There's a whole bunch of fighters out here who live in the real f***ing world. Men who are dangerous and dedicated.
Andrew Tate flipped the script by calling Jake Paul's bluff and accepting the challenge. And Jake's response? He vanished without a trace, completely ghosting the situation to avoid confrontation.
but I would whoop his ass. But he wouldn't take a fight against me, because when he loses, I'm not nearly on his level of fame, right? So like, he lost to who? Whereas if he loses to Conor McGregor, it's no big deal. Well, he lost to Conor McGregor, who cares, right? That's what it's about.
Jake Paul's entire ploy hinged on Andrew Tate refusing the fight, giving Jake the chance to spin a narrative of being the fearless warrior no one dares to face. But with Tate ready to throw down, Jake is in full panic mode. He never saw this coming and now finds himself cornered with no way out. The so-called fearless Jake Paul is suddenly silent, proving once again his all talk and no action.
I'm not some washed-up UFC fighter. I'm not smaller than him. I would beat the living shit out of him. And if he wants to fight, I'll fight him any day of the week and I'll fucking wreck him. And
Andrew Tate didn't just challenge Jake Paul to a fight. He delivered a reality check so brutal it could have come with a medical disclaimer. He flat out called Jake's career a joke and accused him of turning boxing into a TikTok-friendly embarrassment. Hard to argue when Jake's idea of competition includes a 58-year-old Mike Tyson. Speaking of Tyson, let's talk about Jake dragging this absolute legend into his circus. Mike Tyson, the man, the myth, the heavyweight icon, reduced to a content gimmick because Jake wanted to play tough. Andrew Tate summed it up perfectly. It wasn't boxing, it was elder abuse. Jake didn't see Tyson as a revered figure who revolutionized the sport. No, he saw a shortcut, a cheap way to grab headlines without taking real risks. The worst part? Jake genuinely thought people wouldn't notice.
However, I do understand what he's doing. I understand that he is very, very smart, even with his marketing angle. I'm just a YouTuber. You're not just a YouTuber. You're a full-grown man with the best coaches in the world who's dedicated his life to learning how to box for years. You know how to box. You're not a complete amateur. You know how to box very well. 3, 4, 5 years of training combat sports. You can box. The guy's not a jackass.
Jake Paul's greatest masterpiece? His laughable fight history. It's like opening a box of fireworks and finding nothing but sparklers. His opponents? Retired MMA fighters who didn't even specialize in striking. Ben Askren, a wrestler with the speed of a snail. Tyron Woodley, a shadow of his former self. And Nate Robinson, a basketball player who looked like he'd never thrown a punch in his life. Jake's entire career is a carefully curated highlight reel of low-risk, high-reward stunts designed to fool casual fans into believing he's the next big thing. Andrew Tate ripped through that facade like wet paper, calling him out. Jake, if you trained half as much as you cherry-pick opponents, maybe you'd actually earn some respect. Harsh, but undeniably true.
He is not just a YouTuber. He is a young man training with Canelo and Ryan Garcia.
When I made the video, I really disliked Jake Paul. Now, I don't dislike him.
And then there's the $3 million challenge. A real, no-nonsense offer. Winner takes all. No excuses. Andrew Tate didn't care about the money. He wanted to expose Jake Paul for what he truly is. And Jake's response? He ran. Not walked, not jogged, but ran. Here's the thing. Jake Paul thrives in controlled environments. His fights are carefully choreographed to protect his ego and maintain his narrative. He's the king of playing it safe while pretending he's taking massive risks. But a fight with Andrew Tate? That's not part of the script. It's a gamble he can't afford to take because it threatens to dismantle the illusion and blow up his entire brand.
$3 million. You put 3, I put 3. Winner takes all. You know my name, Andrew Tate. I will fight you any day, anytime. Let's fucking go. If I were to fight Jake Paul, I would take it completely seriously like a real fight, and I'd whoop his ass. I'd beat him. Jake. Everyone thinks he's just so new.
Jake Paul's rejection of Andrew Tate's $3 million challenge wasn't just a strategic dodge. It was a loud confession. A confession that all the bravado and trash talk is just that, talk. Jake, who loves branding himself as a disruptor and game changer, suddenly went radio silent when confronted with a genuine threat. Let's not forget his loss to Tommy Fury, which marked the beginning of his downfall. Facing Tate in the ring, that would have been the final nail in the coffin, and Jake knew it. But here's the kicker: even without the fight, Andrew Tate's public takedown of Jake Paul was enough to do serious damage. This wasn't just a roast, it was a full-scale humiliation, a masterclass in exposing a fraud. While Jake's TikTok followers and YouTube fans might still buy into his act, the rest of the world sees right through it now. Tate reminded everyone what boxing is really about: respect, skill, and authenticity. Jake Paul? He's just a loudmouth who got lucky riding the algorithm. Tate's psychological warfare against Jake Paul was nothing short of devastating. He didn't just call Jake a clown. He dissected his entire existence like a surgeon with a scalpel. Tate accused Jake of being nothing more than a kid playing dress-up in a sport he doesn't respect. And let's face it, Jake's career has always been less about boxing and more about racking up TikTok likes. Tate's savage line, Jake, your legacy isn't built on fights. It's built on TikTok captions. Was so precise Jake probably needed an ice pack for his ego. This wasn't trash talk. It was psychological annihilation. Jake's paper-thin self-image cracked right before everyone's eyes. Social media had an absolute field day. Platforms like Twitter and Instagram exploded with memes and hashtags like #JakePaulExposed and #TateVSJake. Fans gleefully roasted Jake for dodging Tate's $3 million winner-takes-all challenge. The irony was palpable. Jake, the self-proclaimed fearless fighter, was running faster than his own hype train. His carefully curated persona as a fearless disruptor in the boxing world suddenly looked as flimsy as one of his cringeworthy post-fight celebrations. This wasn't just another day online, it was a reckoning. The backlash was brutal. Fans, haters, and everyone in between piled on. Jake, who claims to have earned over $40 million from boxing, found himself in a position no amount of money could fix. Memes labeled him a fraud, a runner, and, most damningly, scared. Even his most loyal fans began to question their allegiance. Andrew Tate hit the nail on the head when he said, Jake, even your fans know you cherry-pick fights to protect your brand. And the worst part? He's absolutely right. Jake's avoidance of Tate wasn't just a strategic move. It was a neon sign screaming fear. Meanwhile, Andrew Tate emerged from the ordeal without breaking a sweat. Tate didn't need to step into a ring to dismantle Jake Paul's facade. By simply issuing the challenge and watching Jake fumble, Tate cemented his dominance. Fans now see him as the real deal, a fighter who doesn't need gimmicks or hand-picked opponents to prove his worth. This wasn't just a win for Tate, it was a masterstroke. He walked away looking like the beacon of authenticity in a sport increasingly plagued by YouTubers and influencers pretending to be athletes. Jake Paul, on the other hand, has been reduced to a meme, a cautionary tale of what happens when hype meets reality. Andrew Tate exposed more than just Jake Paul's fear. He exposed the shallow, fame-driven culture that Jake represents. In doing so, he reminded everyone why boxing is called the sweet science. It's not about TikTok likes or viral moments. It's about skill, respect, and the courage to back up your words. And in that arena, Jake Paul is utterly outclassed.
Two brothers, one cage. Jake Logan, you Tristan. Who comes out alive?
You know what? I'm trying so hard to not start internet beefs. I'm really trying not to.
You could say Jake and Logan, man.
Bro,
don't worry about it.
No, I can't lie. Bro, I'm going through life. I'm trying to live peaceful now. Fed agents in my house, Matrix is out.
For Jake Paul, this was nothing short of a PR catastrophe. His entire brand is built on the idea that he's fearless and willing to fight anyone. But rejecting Andrew Tate's challenge tore a massive hole in that narrative. This wasn't just about dodging one fight. It was about what that dodge represents. A fight with Tate wasn't merely risky. It was a direct threat to the entire illusion Jake has spent years crafting. Let's not forget that Jake's loss to Tommy Fury already exposed cracks in his armor. Stepping into the ring with Tate would have delivered the final blow, and Jake knew it. Andrew Tate's MIC drop moment was the ultimate cherry on top of this roast fest. Asterisk, Jake, you don't need boxing gloves. You need to stay on YouTube, where losing isn't as painful. Asterisk, brutal, accurate, and so cutting it could have doubled as a knife. Jake's rejection of the challenge wasn't just about avoiding a fight. It was an unspoken confession. Deep down, Jake knows he's out of his league. Tate didn't need this fight to prove anything. His legacy is already solid. But Jake? He needed this fight to keep his illusion alive. Now that illusion is shattered, and the fallout is something Jake might never recover from. His road to redemption isn't just uphill. It's practically vertical. Hyping his next fight won't be enough. He'll need to convince a now skeptical audience that he's more than a YouTuber with boxing gloves. A tall order when even his die-hard fans are questioning his credibility.